Hi, my name is Hananya Haffinger, and welcome to the 19th class on the structure and details of the second Beis Hamikdash. Continuing with the history of the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. So, like we said, Shlomo HaMelech became king at the age of 12, and 4 years later, at the age of 16, he began building the first Beis Hamikdash. It took 7.5 years to build the Beis Hamikdash, and they used 150,000 workers. And it says that it was built 480 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim. And if we do the math, we saw in the previous class that we had the Mishkan for 479 years, plus the year between Yetzias Mitzrayim and the building of the first Mishkan. So Shlomo HaMelech is king for the first 36 years of Beis Rishon, because the first 4 years of his kingdom were during the time of the Mishkan in Givain. And after that, the kingdom split into Malchi Yehuda and Malchi Yisrael. And as we can see, Malchi Yehuda lasted a lot longer than the Malchi Yisrael, because the Malchi Yisrael were steeped in Avodah Zarah and all types of other Averos. And so therefore, after 241 years, they were sent into Golus, and that's the Golus of the 10 Shvatim that was brought about by the king of Ashur, who was the power in the world at this time. So this is the Assyrians, which at this point in time in history were the greatest power in the world. Now when the kingdom split in half, the first king of Malchi Yehuda was Rechavam, the son of Shlomo HaMelech, and the first king of Malchi Yisrael was Yeravim ben Navat. So Yeravim ben Navat took the northern part of Eretz Yisrael, and he pretty much right away built roadblocks to stop the Yidden from going to the Beis Hamikdash, because if they would go to the Beis Hamikdash, they would see Rechavam sitting and Yeravim ben Navat standing, because the halacha is that Ein Yeshiva Ba'azara Elo L'malchi Beis David Bilvad. And so he built roadblocks, and in addition, because people had such a strong desire and a huge Yetzer Hara to do Avodah Zarah, so he built an Avodah Zarah in the area of the roadblocks, and he also built an Avodah Zarah up north in the place of Dun. Now, any Yid who wanted to serve Hashem found a way to leave the kingdom of Yeravim ben Navat and the Malchi Yisrael so that they could go and serve the Eibush during the Beis Hamikdash. And so the whole land became more and more corrupt, especially since now it was being emptied of all the good people, all the people who wanted to serve Hashem. And so as a result, after 241 years, they were all sent into Galus, into exile. So let's just see over here briefly the kings of the Yehuda. It's just going to go through the names. We're not going to pay much attention to it. I'm just going to go through and show the names. So we have 20 kings of Yehuda, and then for Malchi Yisrael, there were 19 kings. So Malchi Yehuda lasted around a third longer than the Malchi Yisrael, because the Malchi Yehuda lasted, like we see over here, 374 years. This is after the split. And the Malchi Yisrael lasted 241 years. Now it says about the last king of Malchi Yisrael, his name was Hosea, that even though he was evil, he wasn't as evil as the other kings. And the reason is because even though he did not destroy the Avodah Zarahs that were in the land, but he did remove the roadblocks, and he allowed Yidden to travel to the Beis Hamikdash. And this was a Hosea that appears right here at the end. And also for Malchi Yehuda, an important person is Yeshiyahu. Yeshiyahu was the 16th king of Malchi Yehuda, and he was a king for 31 years. He became a king in the year 3285, which is 80 years after the Golus of the 10 Shvatim in 3205. He was a king for 31 years, and then after that there was just 22 years until the Churban, and really just 11 years until the Golus of Yechanya, when Nebuchadnezzar emptied Eretz Yisrael of all the great people, including Mordechai, Yecheskel, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He basically emptied the land of all the powerful people, all of the leaders. So Yeshiyahu was king towards the end, and Yeshiyahu, he was the one that finally destroyed all the Avodah Zarah that was in the land of Eretz Yisrael. And he's also known as the one who buried in the underground areas that Shlomo HaMelech built for the Aron. He's the one who buried the Aron over there. And here we have an Assyrian soldier from Ashur. So this is when Ashur was the greatest power in the world. Ashur is the one who sent the 10 Shvatim into Galus, and he replaced them with the Kutim, who ended up creating many problems for the Yidden. Now after Ashur lost power, so then Bavel, the Babylonians, came into power, and that's when Nebuchadnezzar, both over here, exiled what we said, the Golus of Yechanya, and then afterwards destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash. So we'll shift now to the time of the Golus. So like we said, here we have the power in Bavel. Bavel was in power for 70 years. And within those 70 years, we have 45 years for Nebuchadnezzar, 23 years for his son Evel Merodach, and 2 years or 3 years for his son Belshazzar. And the numbers over here of 8 years and 11 years, these are the mistakes that were made in calculating the 70 years of Galus. Belshazzar's mistake was that he calculated from the beginning. And as we'll see, Achashverosh's mistake is that he counted from 11 years before the actual Churban, because that's when we had the big Galus of Yechanya and all the great people in the land. So at this point, after 70 years, when Belshazzar used the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, he was then killed, and the power shifted to Madai and Paras, which are the Medes and the Parthians. Just one thing to mention over here is that the Nevuah of Yecheskel happened 14 years after the Churban, meaning 56 years before the Beis Hamikdash was rebuilt. That's when Hashem had the conversation with Yecheskel about telling Yidden about the Tzuras Habayis. So then the power shifted to Madai and Paras, the Medes and the Parthians, and that lasted for 53 years. So if you do the cheshbon, it's 19 years until the building of the Beis Hamikdash, and then there's another 34 years, because 19 and 34 is 53. So that totals the 53 years of the rule of Paras. And over here we could see that it's 19 years before. Also for Bavel, you have this number 19. It's 19 years before that weren't supposed to be counted. And then 51. 19 and 51 is 70. So those 19 years are supposed to go into the time before the Churban. So we have to get 19 years from Paras to get the total of 70 years. Here we have the kings of Madai and Paras. It started first with a father-in-law and son-in-law, Daryavish and Kerish. Kerish is the one that gave Rishus Livnis permission to build the Beis Hamikdash. And here's one of the times that the Kutim created many problems for the Yidden. They're the ones that undermined the building and made it come to an end. So when he gave Rishus Livnis, Zerubbabel, who was the son of Shaltiel, who was the son of Yechonia, so he was from Beis David. He was the king that was brought into Galus by Nebuchadnezzar. He went to Eretz Yisrael and he led over 40,000 Yidden back there. So it was a very difficult time for the Yidden that they went with over 40,000 Yidden, and then the building came to a stop, and it wasn't rebuilt for another 18 years from 3390 till the end of the Galus, which we could see is in 3408. Just a simon to know when the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed is Shlach, that Hashem sent the Yidden outside of Eretz Yisrael. Then we have the next king is Achashverosh, and he made the mistake that B'shnas Shalosh L'Molchi, 3 years in, he said there's 5 years and 3 years, so that's 8 years. He started counting from here. He thought 8 years passed, and now we start the calculation of 70 from here, and that's why he made the big Suda, thinking that the Beis Hamikdash would not be rebuilt. So Achashverosh was then in power for a total of 14 years, followed by his son, which is Daryavish, the son also, they say, of Esther, who was in power for 34 years. And so the second Beis Hamikdash was built during the time that Paras was the ruling empire of the world. So then we move into the second Beis Hamikdash, and then after Paras, the great power in the world were the Greeks, the Yavanim, and they ruled for 180 years. And at the beginning of the 180 years, it's 6 years in, we have what's called Minyan Shtaris, which is exactly 1,000 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim, which was in 2448. This is in 3448. This is when Alexander the Great marched to Yerushalayim to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, with the encouragement of the Kutim again, because they helped him in his battles, and so he wanted to reward them, and that's what they requested. But when he saw Shimon HaTzadik, the Kohen Gadol, coming out with the big Kohen Gadol, with the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, he got off his horse and bowed to him, and they asked him why he's doing it, and he said it's because he sees him leading him in all of his wars, and now with the tide shifted, that Alexander sided with the Yidden and was against the Kutim. And one of the things they did to honor him is that they started Minyan Shtaris, the dates on documents from the year that he entered into the land of Eretz Yisrael. Then at the end of the time that the Greek Empire ruled over Eretz Yisrael, we have the story of Hanukkah, and then the power shifted to the kings of the Hashmonaim. So we have that for 103 years, and then there's another 103 years left for the total of 420 years of the second Beis Hamikdash. That's when we have Malchus Hordus, which was really under the power and the control of the Romans, who ultimately destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash. And with that, we'll end the class.